my review of Assassination Classroom. Okay, so it's the final exam time, and well, long story short, Gakuho Asano is pulling off all of the stops to just kind of eliminate E-Class. So it starts off with Gakushu and his four lackeys meeting with his father and discussing their success, as it were, at the school festival. But Gakuho doesn't really see it as a success. He points out that even though they came in first, E-Class was still trailing behind in close third. So, yeah, they really needed to kind of step up their game to actually try and bring them down, as Gakuho puts it. And Gakushu points out that there was nothing they could have done to actually succeed, and that the outcome would have been the same regardless. At which point Gakuho brings up the possibility that they didn't do nearly enough, and brings up the idea that they could have used food poisoning to shut them down, which disturbs Gakushu and his friends quite a bit. So, at which point Gakushu points out that he doesn't feel like that would have been an appropriate strategy to take against E-Class, and points out that they are trying their best, but he feels like that the philosophy is kind of starting to break down a little bit because E-Class is starting to actually show that they're not as incompetent as everybody thinks. At which point Gakuho tells his son to leave so that he can talk to his friends alone for a few minutes. And sure enough, Gakushu leaves. But then 3 minutes goes by. Gakushu wonders what exactly is going on, and then Gakuho asks Gakushu to come back in. And when he does come back in, the rest of his friends are basically just raving like madmen. They're all muttering "Kill E-Class without mercy" to themselves. They are just in a frenzied, enraged state, and Gakushu is understandably disturbed by how much his friends have turned in the past 3 minutes. And when Gakushu asks his father what happened, Gakuho merely remarked that he just inspired in them a desire to win and defeat E-Class at all costs. And then remarks that he's now going to be taking on the finals himself, and that he's going to prep everybody to take down E-Class and finally crush them underfoot once and for all. So, yeah, basically, as I said, Gakuho Asano is not going to pull punches this time. He's going all out to bring down E-Class once and for all, and is doing his best to do that. At which point, E-Class also begins their own prep work and begins to point out that Gakuho Asano's actually started teaching everybody personally. He's teaching them all at a breakneck pace, and there's no real way any of them are going to be able to keep up. And those that aren't able to keep up, he then converts to his own philosophy and turns them into monsters. So yeah, basically they have no chance of actually winning against A-Class this time, because he's slowly corrupting them all one by one and driving them to just kind of become more like him, just driven by a pure hatred to bring down E-Class. And Gakushu can't do much about it because he was dismissed and told that he can study at home regardless. And even some of the teachers have admitted that Gakuho Asano seems to be going too far with his prep work this time around. So, yeah, things are definitely not looking good for E-Class. Basically, long story short, E-Class is basically has no chance, because Gakuho Asano has been honing everybody to a razor sharp point and just kind of churning out all of his students at a breakneck pace to turn them into monsters, so that they'll ruthlessly try and destroy E-Class. So, at which point they arrive at the main campus and discover Gakushu. And Gakushu, long story short, he proposes a truce. He points out that his father has gone too far, that his philosophy is starting to drive people mad and start turning people into monsters, and he humbly asks E-Class to help him take his father down a peg or two and actually break his philosophy. At which point Meg brings up why he doesn't just do it, only to point out that Gakuho has always kind of seen them as a bit of a master and student kind of thing, and that the kind of dynamic they have is that Gakushu is supposed to take his father down, but he's kind of just making it impossible for E-Class to actually get a foothold, and points out that he's kind of ruthless in his whole idea that Class E needs to stay underfoot, or the rest of the people are never going to learn how to become strong, and the rest of the students are never going to excel. Which is why he calls for a truce. He wants them to actually take down his father so that they can actually prove that his philosophy is wrong once and for all. And he even bows to them, something that Nagisa even points out is something that Gakushu, who is openly arrogant, almost never does. And the fact that he's starting to care about somebody other than himself is proof that he's starting to grow as a person. At which point Karma decides to break up the whole situation, pointing out that he's going to plan to come in first and take him down no matter what, and points out that he hopes that Gakushu won't fall too far behind. At which point everybody else expresses their desire to come in with the gloves off, and that they're going to do their best to come in, even without Gakushu actually telling them to. At which point Gakushu realizes that he lit a fire under them and decides that he's going to give it his all as well to kind of help them bring his father down. So at which point Class E goes back to the main campus and begins to study for the midterms, with Core Sensei even going at a bit of a breakneck pace. But before he actually goes but as the finals are actually going to close in, and as he's fully finished training everybody and prepared them to actually go in and try and take down Gakushu and get Gakuho Asano and try and get back into the main campus, Core Sensei actually meets with Gakuho Asano, and shortly before the midterms start, and has a bit of a chat with him. So Core Sensei openly admits that this is going to be their last bout as academic rivals, and points out how similar they are, and how different, and how alike they are, and how much they would actually get along under different circumstances. At which point Gakuho brings up an interesting point, pointing out that this is Core Sensei's first time being a teacher. He's never fulfilled a position like this before, and asks him why that is and why he decided to become a teacher. At which point Core Sensei points out that there are two reasons for why somebody would become a teacher: to either pass on their successes to somebody else, or to cover up their failures. And then asks Gakuho which one his is, and is curious to find out. So it's implied here that Gakuho Asano is actually covering up for a past failure. That past failure is going to come up at some point in the near future. I can guarantee you that. But yeah, just keep that in the back of your mind for now. Gakuho Asano is covering up for a past failure and a past mistake, and is trying to use his new teaching philosophy to try and cover up for that. So yeah, there's definitely something at the core of Gakuho's being that's causing him to be like this. That's causing him to be like, crush E-Class head underfoot, and just go all out. But in any case, as the midterms are starting, Class E begins to go through the school campus to their assigned education rooms, or whatever they're called, their exam rooms. And as they're walking, they see all of the students that have been brainwashed by Gakuho's influence, and point out that he's definitely did a number on them, but to point out that they shouldn't be scared, because as long as they do their best, they won't have to worry about them anyway. And Karma openly agrees to this, but points out that if they do actually try to kill him, then there might be a problem. So, and with that they actually start the exams, and again it's presented as the kids all fighting these giant scary monster things, which are supposed to be representations of all of the different core subjects, and they're very, very brutal. So case in point, they don't even finish the English portion of the test. They're barely able to get through with partial credit. And they just kind of keep going, even though they know that it's going to be rough, and they realize that at the very least they can try and go for partial credit and try to buff up the SAT, the averages for everybody else. And as they're just kind of fighting and churning out a bunch of different things, they eventually get to a subject that isn't normally on what is it called? And as they're going through it, they're actually discovering a subject that's on the test that isn't supposed to be on a junior high test. It's basically as we find out earlier from Ono, who we've not formally met up to this point, but is a recurring teacher character in this. He points out that they've actually been feels like they've been training them to actually prepare for college. Case in point, there's a college level exam question on the exam, though Karma takes care of it no problem, and at which point we find out that in addition to being taught by Core Sensei, they've all taught each other on their best subjects. So as Core Sensei points out, they've all been training and raising their points to raise a fine point, and have actually been training each other to actually hoist themselves up and make themselves stronger as a unit. With Karma in particular just being shining as brightly as a diamond because he's just honed himself to become as strong as he can be, and also pointing out that Gakushu has started to wield a second blade as himself, and that even he is starting to turn around and suddenly realize that his father's philosophy may not be a good thing, and that it's going to enable him to become a better student in the future. So, but with that, Gakushu and Karma actually do begin to face off on the battlefield, as it were, with both deciding how they're actually going to finish themselves off as the final subject finally comes looming into view. So, basically this episode sets up two things. One, that Gakuho Asano is made a test that is just unethical on a number of standards. On a number of levels, it's unethical because it's just kind of training people on college level questions in a junior high class. In a junior high school, they're being trained to answer college level questions, and that is going to be to just churn people out and make them into a mess. But two, it also brings up the fact that the reason Gakuho Asano is acting the way he is because of something that happened in his past that he doesn't want to bring up or talk about. So, Core Sensei is actually highlighted to this point, but it also brings up a point that Gakushu Asano has finally realized that just driving yourself on pure hate is childish, and he doesn't want to be that way anymore. He wants to actually be an academic rival to E-Class and actually, be an actual opponent rather than just somebody who goes in on blind hate and just attacks them. Much like all of his other fellow students are doing, because as we find out during the whole battle portion of the whole exam part of it, the other kids are just kind of going in like rabid animals. They're just attacking questions mindlessly and without thinking, and that is not a good thing for students to be. They have to learn and grow as people and have to actually know how to actually be better people. But because of Gakuho's influence, they've just become unable to actually learn and are just driven by pure hatred. And as Gakushu points out in the episode, that's only going to take them so far. But in any case, that's my review of Assassination Classroom. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks on my way saying thanks, so be sure to check those out in the description below as well. Also, if you guys want to see more videos from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked on the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on YouTube's algorithm. So if you want to see more from me, and want to see either something new or something that you are guaranteed to like, then be sure to check both of those out. But regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!